Welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of the movie like the script. I'm one of the hosts, Bob Rose, at Thundergrunt Bob, and right now, Jamie's going to introduce himself.
I'm Jamie Nash. I am the screenwriter and the writer of the Save the Cat Writes for TV book. I want to say workbook, but that's my other book. My other book is the Save the Cat Beat Sheet Workbook. You can buy both anytime you want, so go do it.
Awesome. Now, Jimmy?
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant. You can find me at scriptbutcher.com.
Awesome. And today we're going to do the exact thing that the internet begs of us is three white guys give their opinion on Sinners. We're going to give the masses what they beg. Before we get into our talking points, we're going to go around and we're going to just say our personal thoughts on the movie that don't have anything to do with, what we're going to talk about. Who wants to start? I'm going to let you guys choose.
Do we do paper, rock, scissors, Jamie?
No, that'll take too long. Jimmy, you start.
All right. Yeah. So first of all, it was like really exciting to go to. I saw this for the first time 3 weeks after it came out on a Wednesday night at 9:00 in a theater that is always empty when I go there, and every seat was full. So that was cool. That was awesome. And then it's just really cool to have a big budget movie that's original like this. This used to be the thing that we went to the movies to see, and so
like 1992 all over again.
Dude. And so I'm saying that because I feel like, and I've said this a couple other times on the show, I feel like when a movie like this comes out that's original, that's big budget, it's not based on anything, that's a huge hit, everybody loves it, people go, masterpiece, it's the best fucking thing ever made. And it's because we're so starved for the type of movies that we used to get all the time that when we finally get one, everybody loses their mind because it feels so good, because movies used to feel like this like every week when you went to them. So but I love so much about this movie, and it's not going to sound like I do because I do have critiques, because I think this is a 4-star cinematic experience for me with a half-assed, undercooked, aggressively fine vampire movie in the last portion of it. And so yeah, there's my thoughts.
Okay. I mean, 4 stars is pretty good.
Yeah, I love it.
Terms.
I love it.
I hate star ratings, but 4 is pretty good.
I love it.
Jamie?
I think this is the best movie made in the last 50 years. Yeah. I'm pretty much where Jimmy is. I really enjoyed going to the movie theater. I haven't been there in a long time, and watching this, and I was thoroughly entertained through the whole thing. To echo something Bob is probably going to say, you kind of said it in a chat we had. I don't think he cares as much. Ryan Coogler cares as much about the vampire stuff. It just felt like, he had bigger fish to fry here, and he used that to do a thing, but he didn't care about it that much. Like, I don't think he's somebody that struck me as a person that had, I don't know, maybe he has watched every vampire movie ever made and was dying to make a vampire movie. But it felt like all the kind of typical checkbox moments from a vampire movie, but in this other great movie, and then you combine the two, and it makes it super interesting. So I really liked it. I mean, even though to
add to you quoting me,
yes,
I think I said in a non-insulting way, I said it was like if you made A Beautiful Mind and there were suddenly werewolves.
Yeah.
It's like an Oscar-worthy movie with Oscar-worthy shit, and then it's like, oh, by the way, here's a genre movie just at the end.
And not to trigger Bob or anything, but it's a little like Christopher Nolan making a Batman movie. So it's
no, just kidding.
It's one of those things. One thing, I saw it in the theater, just to give an example. At 9 a.m., I went to a 9 a.m. showing because I was trying to fit it in my life. I was like, I have this little slice of time between 9 and 12. I'm going to go see it. and I went to see it at 9 a.m. and I had to get the weird seat. You know, the seat in the back that's really not part of the theater, but is like one to the right.
Yeah.
I had to get that seat. That's how crowded it was. Sold out, basically. The
awesome.
front row was empty, but I had to take that seat. So, and there's actually two seats that are that extra two seats they like tacked on because they had space. And I took the one I think second in, thinking somehow I'd be closer to the screen, not further away. And I get there, and there's this couple there with a baby,
Oh,
a 2-year-old that's talking the whole time, and they were in my seat. So I didn't take it, so I took the one next to him. But then the whole time I was worried, like somebody was going to come up and say, "Hey, you're in my seat," because they were in my seat. And it's a 2-year-old watching Sinners in the back of the theater and talking like the whole time, not paying attention to the screen. Luckily, they left about 10 minutes in and never came back. The father, I guess, I'm going to assume, he stayed, but the mom and the baby, I don't know, maybe they went and saw some other movie or something.
Minecraft.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my only negative. It doesn't even really bother me. I'm more in this weird world where I can even block them out. If it was just us in the theater, the whole time I'm just worried like somebody's going to yell at them and it's going to cause a thing.
there's tension.
Yeah, there's going to be tension, and the whole time I'm just like stressed out, like worried about them. I'm like, they really shouldn't be here doing this. Anyway, they left after about 10 minutes. But that was my greeting back into the theater, was sitting next to the 2-year-old.
Apparently I go to the movies way more than you guys do, and I barely go, so that's crazy how little you must go to the movies.
The last movie I saw in the theater, I think, was Barbie.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
For the show,
we're talking
too.
like almost a year, right?
Yeah, it's all over a year. It's the longest I've ever by far gone without seeing a movie in the theater.
Wow.
So
so before I say, yeah, like since Jamie brought that up, I saw it twice. The first time I'm at an age
Yeah, me
where
too. I saw it twice. Yeah.
I have to go to the theater at a certain time, or else I have to make sure I'm well slept. I've had my sleep, or else this is by no fault of this fucking movie. The first time I saw it, I slept through the middle hour.
Oh God!
Like the entire middle hour. I woke up somewhere around like the vampire attack, and I was just like I fell asleep. I fell asleep way before the vampires, and then woke up during the vampire attack, and I was like, oh fuck, whatever. That's $13 down the drain, right? So I knew I had to see it for the show. So 2 days ago I went, by myself. I get in the theater's like nigh sold out. But there's two young ladies, like teenagers, sitting. One seat is mine, and another. It's like the handicap row. The handicap row. I got one of the ones in the middle, and these two young girls are sitting in my seats. And I stopped for a second, and I had like that morality play in my head because the other seats in that row were empty, and I was like, I think they're theater hopping. It's like they're theater hopping, and I was like, you know what though? I was like, I want as them teenagers to enjoy going to the movies, and even if they're stealing shit right now, I was like, let them have a good night. I was just like, let them have it. And I went and did the same thing Jamie did. I sat in another seat, and the entire time I was so worried somebody was going to walk in and then say, dude, you're in my seat. And then during the movie, I would have had to been like, actually, they're sitting in my seat. I was so worried the whole time.
I scripted my whole discussion with whoever walked in and said that.
Right.
I pre-scripted it in my head.
It didn't happen.
While the movie's playing.
Yeah, it didn't happen. Everything was fine. Nobody came in to take my seat, and then subsequently theirs. But I decided that after I thought about our Electric State episode, which we're going to talk about, and I was like, you know what? I want young people to enjoy their time, even if they're stealing tickets. Just maybe they'll come back for more movies. Yeah, come back. Just steal everything. Go ahead.
At least they paid for one ticket.
Yeah, they definitely saw something else. So that they probably saw Thunderbolts and then went.
Or maybe they weren't allowed into an R-rated movie and had to.
Yeah, that's true. They bought a Minecraft ticket and came
right.
Anyway, I think out of the three of us, I really love this movie, but I also think out of the three of us, I probably loved it the most, and I have less of a problem with the stuff that you guys might have had. But I also think in my mind, I didn't go in expecting a vampire movie. Like I didn't walk. I like even the trailers and everything I know about Coogler and my opinions on his filmmaking up until now. I did not walk in expecting that stuff. So like it didn't disappoint me because I already kind of feel like I have a good beat on what kind of filmmaker is and what interests him and what doesn't. And so like I didn't think I was seeing a vampire movie. I was just seeing a movie that might have vampires in it, and that might have helped it in my also I don't care about teaching people things as we've discussed on this show. So like it as an example of writing, I don't care about lessons to be learned. So that's also not something I'm burdened with. So hence why I might like it a little more than you guys do. So there you go.
Yeah, you're not dealing with what I talk about all the time.
No.
You're not dealing with the post hereditary, post long legs, post barbarian, and then now post.
Not only that is I actively don't care about people
nor should
learning
you.
How to write.
That shouldn't be a part of your experience.
That's the reason I'm on the show. You needed this other force. Like, yeah. So it's fine. I'm not a teacher. I never have been. I wish everybody the best in your writing. No, I don't wish ill, but I'm not a teacher. That's, obviously.
Oh, come on. I learn something every time from you.
Thanks. Anyway, Jamie, who wrote this shit? I think we already answered it 90 times, but
yes, we did, Bob.
Here's what you win. Like the whole time.
Here's what you
David
win.
Boyer. No, wait.
And the writer of this movie is, drum roll, please. It's like some old broadcaster suddenly joined the show. The writer of Creed 2 and Creed.
Did he write Creed 2?
I don't know. He probably I just made that up. I don't know.
I thought he was a producer.
He probably just had characters or something. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
So Ryan Coogler wrote and directed this movie. It was very much, from what I can tell, I listened to a couple interviews with him. The main one was on Maron's podcast. And he had, I think, an uncle that was really into the blues, and he was into the blues a lot. It was based on a specific song that was kind of about people going to a party that seemed, and I can't remember the title, but they seemed like shady gangster characters. And he just was always interested in like doing a kind of all in one day story with these dangerous kind of characters going to a party centered around the blues. And I think that was kind of inspiration he had held on to for a long time in his life. And then it finally turned into this movie, which has the genre trappings. Just FYI, if you don't know Ryan Coogler's filmography. So he started, besides shorts, he had a couple shorts that he wrote. But Fruitvale Station was the thing that really popped him as like a kind of a person to be watched. And from there, Creed, of course, and from there, Black Panther, and from there, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and Creed. Well, he did the Creed sequels again, produced, but not necessarily by him. Though he does get a story by on Creed 3. And then Sinners is his next movie. So pretty great filmography, all things considered. That doesn't, I mean, depending on how you feel about Wakanda Forever, I'm not sure.
And that's not really his fault.
Yeah, that's a weird one. But really, is a filmmaker that I think everything that comes out from him, it's going to get a notice. Like you're going to go see it just because he's behind it. I think you're just going to be
like one of the most interesting filmmakers.
Yes,
work.
Yeah,
he's easily
that.
And I love listening to him talk about filmmaking specifically. Like,
he released that whole video of just talking about the IMAX format.
It's so good.
And instructing the normal public who might not know what to see and what you would be seeing if you choose these different options. It's pretty cool. So he's definitely he's excited about the filmmaking and not just
clearly.
Yeah. Like, I mean, he's obviously excited about the writing, but he likes the entire thing from screening to script.
And for somebody that's fallen into this kind of genre filmmaking with cultural messages and things like that, we were mentioning that he doesn't come off pretentious at all. He becomes off like a guy you just love to talk to, so
Yeah,
you kind of root for him,
yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. Yeah, he's just the type of personality you root for. Not that you don't root for the pretentious guys too, but even
Well, it's
though
a good story, right? Like he made Fruitvale was in college,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely,
And then
yeah,
then it made a bunch of money at the box, like 18 million or something at the box office, and
yeah, yeah.
off to the races.
Off to the races.
Yeah, box office. Speaking of,
Box office. So right now, as of right now, on Box Office Mojo, this date, it's a Friday. We have $247 million worldwide, with 190 of that coming domestically.
Nice.
great.
And just for yucks and giggles, I want to play a little trivia game. Do you guys
Okay.
know? Can you name the top 5 movies box office? This is domestic, so that might screw you guys up a little bit, but that gives you now the top 5 movies this year. Can you name them?
Ooh.
I mean, Minecraft.
Minecraft is number 1 with $400 million domestically.
Captain America.
Captain America is
4.
number
New World.
2. That's number 2.
Okay.
So, by the way,
Okay.
Sinners is already number 3 at 190.
Wow. So we got.
I feel like
2
there's
more.
a horror movie that I'm forgetting or something. Thunderbolts have already gotten on there.
Thunderbolts is number 6 at 91.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So what is the missing one?
Well, I don't think you'll get these, to be honest. That's kind of why. I honestly would have been hard pressed to remember Captain America because I didn't. It kind of came and left my radar, to be honest.
I haven't even seen it still.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. And Minecraft, while I understand it's this juggernaut, it's not a movie I've seen. I probably will see it one day, but I haven't seen that either. So I'll give you the other ones. Mufasa, the Lion King.
Okay.
Is number 4.
Right. That existed. I forgot.
Now here's where it gets weird. Dogman is number 5.
Oh shit.
Okay. We already said 6 is Thunderbolts. Snow White is number 7, but an underperforming number 7, only 86 million, which is not much these days. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is number 8 at 84 million. This is domestic, keep in mind. Number 9, The King of Kings, the religious movie that came out. The Christian movie.
Oh, right. Okay.
Number 9.
But again, because it's early in the year and we haven't hit the summer,
No offense to the
it's only
movie
58
fans listening.
It's only at 58 million. So you would expect all of the top 10 to be at least 120 million by the end of the year, because Mission Impossible,
right.
Superman, Fantastic Four. So it's still early. But anyway, that's where we're at this early in the year. Number 12, interestingly enough, Nosferatu right now.
Okay.
So
well, it's a good segue. Jamie's listing is a good segue into a revisit of a conversation we had 2 episodes ago.
Yes.
It's 2 episodes ago.
3 episodes at this point, I think. I don't know.
Well, yeah. No, because it's Alien 3 and then it was Electric State, right? Does the box office matter anymore? We had a pretty depressing conversation during the Electric State episode. The $320 million budget of Electric State versus Jamie not even knowing it existed. But here's a movie that is completely original. It's tearing it up. It's still got plenty of ways to go, I think, too.
Yeah. I mean,
it.
This one will certainly cross. I mean, it hasn't made a dent internationally yet, which could be because it's a certain slice of American history that doesn't translate or something. But it could
also,
just be it hasn't
released in China.
It hasn't released yet in different places. It could,
but China blocks like supernatural.
They
stuff,
do.
Right?
They don't like vampire stuff and things typically.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I put it on there is because we literally asked the question, like, is it over? Like the box office. And then I feel like 2 weeks later, this came out, and everything that the power of the word of mouth and those big numbers, it's creating the type of situation that box office tends to do, right? That we kind of thought was irrelevant already. But
Right. And that-
yeah,
I mean, to be fair, I'm not comparing the two, but to be fair, the youth of America did show up and have an experience, quote unquote, for Minecraft.
They did.
yeah,
That was a thing, regardless of our opinions
and
and
that was
everything. That did
after the
happen.
electric state as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
already
So-
sort of made us sound like we were wrong. I think
Yeah,
we were
right.
wrong, is what I'm saying, and I think that's
Yeah.
cool.
There's more hope than we thought.
Yes.
It's I'd still argue it's slightly grim, regardless of Sinners.
Right.
There's grim stuff,
But
Yeah.
you know,
I think what's most cool about this, and that's what I
the
was,
tariffs.
yeah, the tariffs. That's right.
Right.
Don't get me started on that.
I know.
I know we're not going to talk about that.
So the most interesting thing about this, though, because internationally it's only made 50 million. It's already in the 250-ish territory.
Yeah, yeah.
But it seems like this movie is having staying power. It's got
Yes.
word of mouth, and maybe it will expand internationally too. Maybe it gets to, and I'm not a box office projectionist anymore. I used to like be really good at this, but maybe it gets to 350, maybe it gets to 400 worldwide.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of money for an original movie
Yeah.
that
Rated
that's-
R.
that, you know, it's not about like, it does have vampires, yes, but it's not like, you know, an original movie like you'd expect almost to get. It's an adult movie, word of mouth. People are just like keep going, and it's kind of snowballing. So,
Yeah.
you know, fingers
It also
crossed.
seems to have. I've seen a lot on my feed, a lot of seeing it more than once.
Yeah.
I've seen that's a pattern with this movie specifically. People going several times.
Is it? Here's a question I had watching it. Best Picture category?
You mean nominated?
Yeah, I think nominated for sure, right?
I mean, it could. It's
Now,
so far.
if
It's a
Black
pretty.
Panther is in the running.
If
then
Black
this
Panther can do it,
certainly-
yeah.
I mean,
It
would think
looks like
so.
a soft year already. So
I mean,
not that this shouldn't be there in a hard year. I'm just
Michael
saying.
B, Best Actor, 2 characters.
Oh my God! Give me
I could definitely
a
see that.
Delroy Lindo nomination. Holy
Delroy
Yeah,
Lindo
shit!
should
That
be
would
nominated.
be so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, so it could even have staying power, like
Has he ever
the
won?
back end.
I don't know, but this
I
is
don't know.
This is like one of my. I love him, and he was so good in this movie.
He's so good in this.
I mean,
so good.
he should have an Oscar by now. This is ridiculous. Like, do it if he doesn't have one.
It just feels like a movie that might like bridge that gap. The box office plus like the execution plus the film plus all this stuff.
That kind of goes into what I was saying, right? Like, it reminded me of a movie I'd see at the Oscars, and then vampires are in it.
Yes.
That's how I felt about it. I was like, it's like if it would have interrupted the King's speech, and it's like, oh no, there's witches,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that.
No, so when I was watching, I was like, I don't know. It feels like this one could have legs. It's coming out so early that always counts against it for Oscars. Like,
And horror is not loved.
horror is not loved, but I do feel
With
like this
Oscars.
one is more something else besides horror. Like I think you almost, I don't want to say forgive the horror.
This is
but
a good.
from an
This is a
Oscars.
good segue into the next talking point. Really, I think.
It is, but I wanted to say one thing. The first time I saw it, when I fell asleep for an hour, the group of people I saw it with, some people were my age and some people were their parents of those people. And the discussion walking out of the theater was, is it a horror movie?
Mm.
I did not add to that discussion. I was simply listening to them talk, but they were actually arguing if it's a horror movie or not.
Right.
Weird.
Which I found interesting. I was like, it was up for debate. They were like, well, no. I mean, but they're like, but there's vampires. So I'm just saying that was my introduction to the discussion.
Yeah, and my rule of horror movies, to an extent, is that does it devolve into this battle for survival kind of movie with monsters, and that is what it does. It is in the end. In the end, that's what it is. So I think if that was in the beginning and then they survived it and then it became the movie it was, then it might not be a horror movie. But because it culminates in the survival story,
Yes.
The only thing I said to the people I went with was, does it matter?
Yeah. Well,
I was like,
ultimately,
did you like it or not? Like, we don't have video stores anymore. We don't need categories. Does it matter? Like, did you like it? You know, they kept arguing about that. I was like, Okay,
I remember
it's a
when
comedy.
that question really popped into the forefront, and we did this on our first podcast, was Get Out.
Yep.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it had a lot of people were questioning, is it a horror movie? What is a horror movie? Is it too good to be a horror movie? Is it, there was all that kind of stuff. So
Too good to be a horror movie.
go back to
is
that
heartbreaking.
episode and see what we said.
Yeah.
That's the first episode, literally.
No, I didn't want to retread, but I almost put the moral premise on here because I felt like they'd have similar things, but I didn't put it on here.
Yeah. Planning your POVs, is that the segue you were talking about?
Yes, because Jamie said this one's different, and I think that's part of the reason.
Well, I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to hear what you have to say about that. My thing is, this is a very simple thing that I found constructive in this movie. The one thing when Jimmy went back and rewatched, I asked when the switch from when they suddenly jumped the vampire story, that scene where the Native Americans are chasing and they're in the house, and because all of a sudden that's outside of the story we're telling.
Mhm.
That's like, meanwhile, off on some farm somewhere, or off in some farmhouse. And that scene happened immediately after what scene, Jimmy? It was
it's the Annie. So we meet Annie, the supernatural hoodoo expert, and that's at 37 minutes, and that's our first taste of supernatural.
So, yeah. And then we go to the meanwhile scene.
Then there's like a little bit of quick catching up with the gathering and the team with some music. So everybody's on their way to the club, and then we swap at 43 minutes, Jamie.
Very, very interesting. So when we'll get back
Are you saying it's because it's not an earlier introduction, it feels different, is what you're saying?
No, I'm kind of, so there's two things here. The thing I find instructive about this movie is the way it does POV. It kind of starts with Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
When Sammy meets the brothers, the twins,
mm-hmm.
then we're allowed to spread out our POV to different characters. So there's this kind of, I always call it the baton pass off kind of thing. And some people don't know how to do this. They just randomly do POV shifts. And sometimes that can work. There's many movies that just randomly jump from POV.
Yeah, it feels like a book.
It feels like a book. It's like, okay, first we're going to be with this scene, then we're going to go to this scene, then we're going to go to this scene. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. This is because of my TV experience, like coaching TV and working on pilots with TV, because this comes up a lot in television when you have a lot of characters to stuff in a pilot. And Game of Thrones is one I point to a lot because they do a good job of this. But I thought this movie did it in a film. It does really well with the baton pass off of POV. It does not jump to new characters until we meet them through the previously established characters. And the one spot where then it jumps to the vampires is the one where two things happen. We are introduced to supernatural in the world we're telling the story of. So that already we're like, this thing's protecting you. And I have these, I know the ways of supernatural. And we're expanding the world to have a supernatural base at that point. So in that way, we get all the way to the end of the characters, meet the supernatural person, and that allows us to then expand to this new scene that has supernatural. It also does a thing where, because the party's starting, it feels like the culmination of our mini story. And now we can go to a new story, which has the vampires in it. So anyway, I just thought it did a really good job of that. And it's something I run into a lot, especially in the pilot world, is especially if you have a big world building story. I know this isn't quite the same. This is a world building story. It has a lot of world to build.
It's super immersive.
It definitely is. It does a weird thing. I didn't bring this up, but it's kind of related. It doesn't have a window character, but because I almost wanted to label like what the twins are coming, because they're returning to the world that they lived in. So it gives you an excuse to say, how long's it been? 7 years? What are you doing?
Right.
What have you been doing? And it's like a window character, but it's something else. They're kind of fish reintroduced to water. as opposed to fish out of water.
Yes.
You know, they're fish swimming, coming back.
And that's
coming
the
back from
engine
water.
for all the exposition.
It is.
Yes.
And it works really well. And I was kind of marveling at it. I'm like, this is another tool in the toolbox. Whatever you call this, whatever you label this, it's not quite fish out of water, but it almost is. It's like fish who's been out of water for a couple years.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it's like.
A re-moistened fish.
That's right. That's right.
So why I thought it was going to be a segue, Jamie, because you were saying what's different about this. Something that you talk about a lot that I think is cool is when you're playing with genre, is a way to approach it freshly is to change the point of view character, right? Mm-hmm. So like this, what is fresh about this is it's, you know, Black characters in Jim Crow era South, you know, dealing with what we're going to talk about soon, you know, the institutionalization of that. That's the freshness. That's the unique.
It's the new premise paint.
Yes. And so that is very instructive, that just by choosing that, you know, those characters and the why here, why now, that are specific, that's what like is the canvas for all the cool freshness of this movie, I think.
Yeah, and it's not unlike like a movie like Prey or something that took IP and repositioned it in a completely new place and time. And even though the movie sort of follows the beats of original movies we've seen, it feels totally different because it's Predator in a different time and place.
Yeah, so that's all I want to say.
How many people have I seen online can say this is, you know, Ryan Coogler's From Dusk Till Dawn?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not on here anywhere, guys. But what I think more, what I was distracted by more so than Dusk Till Dawn, because for me it's just the structural beat in Dusk Till Dawn and nothing more. I can't believe how often.
Totally.
I can't believe how often we reference this on the show, or maybe it's just me. But Demon Knight, it's more like Demon Knight to me than anything else, any other cops. Like all the scenes at the door with Billy Zane trying to seduce the person at the door and get them to let him and the demons in. I mean, I was so distracted by it. I kept being like, "Where's Billy Zane?"
I bet you Ryan Coogler loves Demon Knight.
How could you not, man? Yeah.
No, he seems to have that.
Lead. Yeah.
Right. Ernest Dickinson. He seems to love this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Whenever he talks, like Jamie said, whenever he talks on podcasts, the guy he really seems to love like movies. His movies are so artful, but then when he talks about movies, I'm like, no, he likes everything. Like I said, Puss in Boots 2 was a inspiration for the villain in this movie, so he likes everything. It's true. I mean, Puss in Boots 2 rules, by the way. Anyway, it does. Let's talk about slow burn horror.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with this one. Even some of the criticism this one's drawn is just how slow burn it is. But I'm going to have a new book coming out at the end of the year. Save the Cat Writes for Horror, if the title stays. So maybe by the time you listen to this, it'll be out probably by the fall. And I have a big section of basically comparing the two tracks of horror, relentless horror versus slow burn horror. And the one thing I always say about slow burn horror is if you did this movie right, like From Dusk Till Dawn or something marketing wise, you'd have a hard time writing the log line for it. And it's because the thing that happens that you pitch doesn't happen to so late in the movie. And maybe it's even a twist, maybe it's like a thing. And I, like Get Out would be a version of that. You can describe like the log line I have in my book for Get Out that I made up would be like, after a young African-American man visits his white girlfriend's family for the weekend, he must uncover the sinister truth behind their seemingly benevolent facade to escape with his life, or else become a victim of a twisted conspiracy to transplant his consciousness into another body. That isn't revealed until like the 70-minute mark, right? So the real log line for Get Out is like something like guy goes on a date, or guy goes to visit his girlfriend's parents, and there's something mysterious going on,
Yeah.
or something. And this movie doesn't even have that. And that's not a negative towards it. It's just pointing that we're in slow burn territory all the way.
This is 92 minutes, right? Until we get to that. Isn't that what Jimmy's thing said? 92 minutes?
Yeah.
The team finally realizes they're up against vampires
yeah,
in 92 minutes.
92 minutes.
That's pretty slow burn.
She says, these aren't Hades, they're vampires.
Yeah.
Right.
And other ones like Jurassic Park even is slow burn, as we've talked about in this show. The logline Rocky, but horror in particular. Like, so Jurassic Park's like, after a billionaire entrepreneur creates a theme park populated with genetically engineered dinosaurs, a group of survivors must navigate the island overrun by escaped predators to reach safety, or else face being hunted down and eaten by the creatures long extinct. That doesn't come for a while. If you really did like the true logline of that without giving away what happens at the midpoint, it would be like a bunch of people go to an island with dinosaurs created by DNA and explore it and talk about it, So that's how you kind of know you're in slow burn territory. Now, this movie, slow burn and horror works best. Slow burn works best a lot in horror movies, in my opinion. I think horror movies have some of the best slow burn movies. And I think
Witch.
Yeah, The Witch. There's all kinds. Aliens to an extent. The Exorcist. All these movies are kind of these slow burn kind of movies, haunted house movies, and that's because you have the dread kind of creeping along. You have the anticipation of the horrible thing happening. So your mind is working overtime. And I've talked about a bunch of techniques in the past that I outline in my book about how to make slow burn work. One of them is fun and games and more debate. So that doesn't happen here. Because the vampires aren't introduced to debate. So what happens in that is something like the monster's introduced, but not as a threat. And they debate, basically, they gaslight each other. They're like, the monsters aren't real. That's not really here. Scares in the shadows. The monster's secretly operating in the background, killing things while we go through some other story, oblivious to it. That like Halloween would be the example of that. And fun and games is dread and games. And that's one where it's constantly dread. We keep hinting of warnings that the vampires are coming. And that's all throughout the slow burn part. That doesn't happen in this movie. But the one thing this movie does really, really well is the last technique I have. And it's what I call drama. And it's the thing Jason Blum once said. So Jason Blum had this quote that what is the dramatic movie that gets interrupted by the horror movie? And like Bob said, this is an Oscar movie that gets interrupted by the horror genre at some point. And the horror genre takes over this Oscar movie. And
the Oscar movie about like the Klan having this killing floor type rental place, right?
And there's tons of tension and dread in that story. It's almost
in that story, right?
There's almost like a slow burn crime, Jim Crow crime era, something story going on. Where in another movie, maybe there would be a big attack, during the party or something by the Klan or by the people that were pulling the double cross. And we feel that. So that drama, that story is present and we can feel it. And this on a scene by scene level, it's super entertaining. It's just on a scene by scene level. Every one of those scenes is super entertaining. And I didn't feel like bored at all, because I was just this is fine.
Despite me falling asleep, I didn't either.
and there's one other technique this movie uses, which we're going to talk about the opening and closing image in a minute, but it does two things. It does one thing that I mocked in another movie, and then it does another thing that is my least favorite way to start a movie. So the opening image, or in my book, I call it opening scare in a horror movie. Opening scares have a whole bunch of ways you can do it. You can do the shard of glass scare, which is like Midsommar, where her sister kills herself in the mask and stuff like that. That's like an opening. That's like a horror beat that has nothing to do necessarily with the supernatural horror or that comes later, the monster that comes later, but it's still scary. There's still some scary thing. There's the first kill, like in Jaws. That's another classic one you can do. Sometimes it's the origin of the horror, maybe something like the puzzle box opening in some ways in Hellraiser or something like that. This one does my least favorite, but still effective, which is the flash forward. I always feel like the flash forward is when you have no other choice. You have to go with the flash forward. They could have done a vampire thing. They could have done Ireland in the year 1200, or something with a traveling musician. They could have done something like that if they wanted to. But they chose to do the flash forward to set, which does at least lay the table like, hey, something really horrible is going to happen. This person that you're going to see as joyful and innocent, this is who they look like after this event. And that whole thing is working in your head. It's like this weird bomb under the table that the whole time you're watching the rest of this.
It's like a genre. The
Right.
genre movie is coming.
The genre movie is coming. It's a promise. Now, the other thing they do, and I think it's smart that they do it, is they put that scroll in the beginning, the title card, and they kind of hint at like exactly the genre stuff that's coming.
You mean the music explanation of the
of the music, the musicians who can open the
Right.
deal.
Now that one reminded me a little what a version of that I found that also did that. The one that always pops in my head was Lady in the Water. Did this whole like animated breakdown of the monsters and stuff of this weird lore. You know what I mean? I don't know if you remember that.
I love that movie.
Yeah,
because it's so weird.
It's so weird, and they did a whole thing like that, like to kind of say, "Hold on, we'll get to that part. Now watch the rest of this for a little while." But anyway, so this movie does that. That's how it kind of handles some of its slow burn aspects. The other thing it does from a save the cat structure perspective, and this is also informative, and this is something I see a lot in television pilots or TV in general. I think what it does a good job of, and I didn't do a specific breakdown of it, but you could almost map the three main characters. I'm going to say three main characters, and you could almost do a save the cat beat sheet for them that sort of has some plot movement as it goes. So if you said Smokestack and Sammy, it's like Sammy kind of has a catalyst of getting pulled into this thing. Maybe when he plays his music for the first time and Annie hears it and she says, kind of hints at the supernatural and stuff like that. And it there's a progression, or maybe it's the relationship stories between Smokestack and the women they love.
Yeah, there's three B stories that happen.
There's three. Right. There's three parallel track stories that, because there's no genre story, they become the A stories. It's like a three parallel track story about three people kind of heading out to do a party, and that keeps you engaged because you can track those almost into a beat sheet. That gets interrupted, like they all intersect with an all is lost of vampires. It's like, and then the finale becomes vampires, and that's kind of the way the structure of this thing breaks down. Without doing it on paper, I think I could probably navigate my way through beat sheets for all three of them. That ends with all is lost. That's the vampires.
One thing that I found interesting, Jamie, based on this, and this is like loose with, it's funny. I'm constantly, I don't think I've ever said this out loud. I'm constantly on a mission to get Jamie to talk about things other than Save the Cat on this show because he has so much else to share and teach.
He's got his lists.
But in this case, I'm literally going to be doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on the Please, Jamie, tell me more about Save the Cat. So Jamie, when it shifts, so 43 minutes, it shifts to the vampire perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at 45 minutes, we go back to Sammy and the twins, and we're at the club. And the patrons are entering the club, and Stack literally says, "Come on in, welcome to Club Juke." And from that moment, we get your standard, like, isn't in Save the Cat, because I'm not in Save the Cat. At the end of Act 2, I mean, at the end of Act 1, when Act 2 starts, that's when the B stories kick into gear.
Yes.
Isn't that okay?
That's
Well,
right.
that's immediately when all of the B stories, the three-hander, Sammy and Perline, Stack and Mary, Smoke and Annie, that all gets all the attention, right?
Mhm.
Starting there
Mhm.
for the next
Right.
10 minutes, it's all about those three relationships, to your point. So it's definitely doing that intentionally.
Yeah, there's definitely some things, not that Coogler used any kind of Save the Cat beat sheet or anything like that.
No, I'm
But-
not saying that, but I'm saying
Yeah, I know you're
yeah.
not. I know you're not. But it definitely has because ultimately with Save the Cat, like my thing is
It's instinctual, right?
Yes,
Well,
it's intuitive.
it's intuitive, but also just the fact that there are moments that move things forward in big ways. They're gear shifts.
Right.
Story, it doesn't just stay the same. It's not just like the same conversation, the same level, the same relationships. The relationships, the stakes, all this stuff keeps moving forward and escalating. It's really about escalation, but there are moments of escalation throughout. And you can track that. It just doesn't track on the vampire level. And it really doesn't track on a group level. It tracks on three individuals level. So you almost have to take each three. And that happens a lot in novels that I work on with clients. And it happens a lot in pilots because TV tends to be about several characters, each with differing stories. You just need more characters in TV a lot of times. Not everything can be like Breaking Bad, where it's pretty much one guy and then it kind of spirals out from him. A lot of times TV has 3, 4, 5 main characters. And, in a pilot, you kind of have to have them all on their own track. And it's just kind of interweaving. And that's what this reminds me of. It reminds me a little bit like of a TV show or something like that. That's how it would almost play
With
out.
3 tracks.
Yep.
Kind of.
Yep.
Before we move on to the next one, this is where I wanted to throw in, speaking to your slow burn approach. I read a quote from Ryan Coogler. We don't really talk much on the talking points about the importance of music in this movie and how music informs the story. But he said that he was inspired to pace the movie like Metallica's One. That's the reference. So this is from an interview in the San Francisco Chronicle. He said, "I wanted the movie to feel like a song, so I used Metallica's One as inspiration." So it's a 1988 anti-war song from Metallica's album And Justice for All, which I love. So
Right.
So here are lyrics he referenced that inspired him. "Darkness imprisoning me, all that I see, absolute horror. I cannot live, I cannot die, trapped in myself, body my holding cell." And he said, the song starts off intense, then it gets melodic, and it slowly goes to somewhere that's just fucking crazy. But by the time you're finished, it was always clear to you were going to get to this crazy. And I mean, you feel that.
Great. Yeah.
I love hearing that. If Metallica's One is one of the main inspirations for this movie. Of all
How many people would guess that?
Yeah.
Like I told these guys that I spent this morning watching YouTube videos about Sinners, right? I'll tell you one thing, not a single one of them mentioned anything about Metallica.
And that's right from his own mouth.
Yeah, that's right from his own mouth. Yeah. So there you go. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the next thing, I mean, this is another classic our show, right? Monster in the House, or Myth. Have we ever called it Myth?
Yeah, it's acronyms for it. Yeah.
That's the standard acronym. Yes. So Monster in the House, we've talked about and I might as well explain the genres because we're also going to talk about institutionalized in a minute.
Yes.
So Save the Cat, the first book, there are genres. If you listen to the show, you have heard me say this probably 80 times by now, I would think, if not more. So there are genres. The genres are actually, in Save the Cat terms, they're more story patterns. They're common patterns you see in stories, kind of categorized. Some of the examples that we commonly use are The Golden Fleece, which has a group on a quest, a road trip in some ways, for a trophy or a prize at the end. That's a Golden Fleece story. There's Buddy Love, which is a story about two incomplete heroes that kind of need each other and have an adventure. And there's some complication that keeps them either apart or together. There's Dude with a Problem, which is an innocent hero suddenly swept into a problem, not by their own doing, kind of Die Hard or something like that. And then there's Monster in the House, which is the one we probably talk about most on the show, because I always bring it up when there's a horror story, debatable. So Monster in the House has three common elements. It has a monster, okay, vampires, a house, the juke club in this case, and a sin. And the sin usually brings about the monster in some ways. The sin is almost karmic reason why the monster exists. And the one thing that this particular movie illustrates is the sin does not necessarily have to be committed by the characters. Sometimes they're just the ones that almost pay the price of the sin.
Right.
So Poltergeist is the one I always like to bring up in this case. Poltergeist, the sin is that they desecrated the graveyard. They just took away the tombstones and they built the houses on top. The family didn't do that, even though the father worked for the company that did it. But the family wasn't culpable in doing that necessarily, but they're the ones that pay the price of that sin.
Mm-hmm.
In this movie, and you know, asking you guys for help for what the sin is, because I've only seen this movie once. I honestly think, though, it's kind of the overall oppression, racism, Jim Crow era, lack of freedom given sort of thing. It's like the opposite of freedom. Everybody's chasing freedom in this.
Dehumanization.
The dehumanization. And all of that is kind of the overall sin that allows the evil to prosper in this world. I think that's the sin we're playing at. Something like that.
It's a broad answer, but that's generally correct. I think.
Right. I think there's
like we can be more specific, but that's pretty much the answer.
I think one of those YouTube videos probably drills down the very specific versions.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they do.
But what I think is, I don't know when we pivot to the next to the merging of the topics of the genres, but there is, because I do think that's the sin. That's why I brought up the hybrid coming next.
Yes.
But also, I mean, Sammy does do the music that his dad warns him about, even though it's like a triumphant, we want him to express his individuality, his voice, his spirit. His performance does invite the evil, attract the evil. So there's something there too. Like, you know what I mean?
I also saw some people say that like his father is weirdly part of like a system of oppression.
Absolutely. The church is another
like,
institution. The church is another.
Not that his father's evil or anything.
No,
it's just,
but that putting him in a box and discouraging him from being individual and discouraging him from expressing himself and creating and using his voice. They're putting him in a box, institutionals. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's more
kind of goes with the title, right? Like we're all, everybody in the movie is sinners.
Yes.
And the only truth is the freedom and expression of this music and art.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And so then you get, and honestly, so I do think like it's interesting that his father expresses the music as a sin. Like he says something that almost sounds like a theme stated. He says, you know, if you go dancing with that devil, you'll bring it back home with you, right? Or whatever he says.
We'll follow you home.
Follow you home.
Yeah.
to me, and I'd like to talk to you guys about this. That seems like a false premise to me in some ways. Like, or maybe it's a true premise. Maybe it's a warning, but not a sin. Because him singing, I don't think this movie or life tries to tell us that doing your art, the blues, any of that is really dancing with the devil.
No.
But the movie shows how it also temptation follows. The freedom often is accompanied by temptation that could be dangerous to you. I feel like at every point when there's music, there's temptation, and like Slim's drinking.
But to me,
I think it's also about appropriation.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Like him expressing his true form. That's not a sin.
Right.
But the whole movie is about people trying, to try to appropriate black music. Let's be honest. That's what the movie's about. Right.
Right.
It's literally what Remick is doing, is trying to appropriate black music.
There's some weird version of this movie that was made 50 years ago that maybe playing music is a sin.
Sammy's arc, I didn't put it on here, but Sammy's arc is so much like Footloose.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like they're like, you gotta dance. And
that's
no. And then by
I can see Ryan Coogler mentioning Footloose. I could totally.
And by the end, they choose to dance. You know what I mean?
Right.
And be free.
And that's exactly what I mean. That's a fake sin, in my opinion.
I got you. Okay.
There's something else.
The movie doesn't agree with his dad.
Yes, I know. Right. Yeah.
I'm just saying it for who's listening. That's what we're trying to say. The movie's not confirming his father being right.
Though it lands right near the theme stated, which is interesting because sometimes the theme stated isn't 100% the theme stated. Sometimes it's the converse of what it really is or something. It's the antithesis.
So it's wow.
Yeah.
So that comes and it is technically, it's what the father would deem a classroom, right?
That's right.
The go to the classroom scene.
Go to the classroom.
Is the father's deemed classroom. Like, you're in the house. He even says you're in the house of God. So that's very interesting. Wow.
I found a lot of times the way I teach theme stated is very specific, just because I want to make it easy for clients and people but I know Blake Snyder in his original books, it's funny when I say this, it's like I'm talking about the Bible or something. In the original text,
in the Old Testament,
my
interpretation scrolls.
Yes. In McGee 7:14. No, but in the original books,
that's your music, Jamie.
That's right. When Blake Snyder was writing about it, he would often I would almost say his theme statements, which again I teach differently just for clarity, but his theme statements were almost like theme brought up as opposed to theme stated, like theme hinted at. It was almost what Blake Snyder was.
So like theme debated.
Yeah, exactly. Like some notion of theme. He wasn't as specific as a lot of times when I teach it, when I say your character has a flaw, call them on it. His were more like this could have totally fit. Like he would have written, if you dance with the devil, you might bring it back home or something. And then he would have put a little sentence afterwards, like, the theme of freedom of expression is the real theme of this. And his father doesn't agree with it, but Sammy will learn that that's the only thing that gives him even a moment of freedom in his life. Or so, he would have said something like that. And I think that's what happens in that moment. So
you feel that totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So secondly to this Monster Now thing, so the sin is the oppression and the institutionalized oppression, which we'll talk about in a second. The character transformations in this are interesting. I think Sammy doesn't go from somebody that's like opposed to music to somebody that is pro music. He kind of is like an innocent character that learns the danger of being free in some ways. Like he wants freedom, and his growth is almost like he experiences the danger of the freedom and yet chooses it anyway.
Yep.
Like that's kind of what happens with him.
I wish I had written down. So there's an argument. I know exactly where it happens, but see, this is what the challenge of doing a movie that we watch in the movies and we can't pause at home.
I pushed back on it for that reason.
I know, no, it's good.
Wait, no, these guys did say that, and I was like, can we wait till it's on streaming?
Okay, Jamie, there's a scene. There's like 3 debates happening all at once, and it's when after the vampires come to the door, and Smoke is trying to talk Sammy. So this is about in the middle. Smoke is trying to talk Sammy out of playing music after tonight.
Right. Doesn't he say something like "kill me right now"?
Yeah, he's basically like saying the things that you're saying. Like, if people catch you performing and being free this way outside of the juke joint, you're going to be in danger. Yes. And Sammy hasn't learned that yet. And that I think is what you're speaking to. I feel that in that moment. So Stack, so Smoke is the one who's been, he worked for Al Capone. He's been in a war. Like, he has experienced those things, and he's trying to teach Sammy, like, it's dangerous in this world that they live in the story world, to express yourself, to be free. Yeah.
You're right,
So, yeah.
It's also not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth the freedom of expression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
no, yeah. And it's kind of what his father, I think, is saying too. I think his father
his own church,
in his own church way.
Yeah.
He's got his own view of it. It was weird though. Honestly, that scene stuck out to me as being a little, for lack of a better term, heavy-handed.
Which one?
The one where he warns him and says, "Kill me now," and that whole.
Okay.
And the reason is, they bring him to this thing and then say, "Don't do it." It just seemed kind of weird to me. You know what I mean? It seemed weird. Like, I'm gonna.
So it seemed a little forced for you.
Yeah, it seemed a little forced.
There's a couple things like that.
Yeah, like it didn't seem as elegant as maybe it could have been or something.
He said, here's the thing he says at the end, Jamie. I got the line. I found it.
Okay.
I'm leaving that plantation just like y'all did. That's the way they end the conversation.
That's right.
So Sammy is declaring now, like, that's what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. So
yeah, and I think that is ultimately his arc. It's like he's a person that wants to leave. He learns the dangers of leaving and still chooses to leave. Whether that's an arc or kind of like he goes through the rigors of true decision making, so he's eyes wide open, to what is
right.
And then he does and when he makes the choice, he's fully informed in making the choice of what he's doing with the dangers. And that seems like his arc. There are arcs for the brothers as well. I think there's like a redemptive arc in one of those that learns like, I think there's a sacrificial arc to an extension of the others. And I think they're a little bit easier to track in some ways. They're kind of classic, the way they start and the way they end, and they're fighting for freedom. But then it's almost like instead of buying freedom, you have to earn freedom, kind of thing. It's not just about money and stuff like that. So
to support what you're saying, in that scene where we meet Annie, Smoke's love interest, and the one that they almost had a baby together, he says, after she's trying to warn him about the supernatural dangers that he's not fearing and should be fearing, and saying, like, I've been protecting you with spells, and he says, I've been all over this world. I've never seen no demons, only power, and money gets you that. So to your point, he literally says that very thing out loud. Like, he that's his that's his like wrong way approach in the before world. Yeah.
Right.
And eventually he believes in that hoodoo sack.
I mean, how can he not?
And he very ceremoniously takes it off at the end.
Yep.
He's ready to go home, ready to die pretty much. Hybrids.
Yeah, Jamie. So I'm gonna set you up for this. I put a bunch of stuff for this section, and I'm hoping we can just riff rather than go through it. But Jamie, we haven't talked much about these monster in the house hybrids, and I thought
Mhm.
since you got this book coming out, I'm sure it's touching upon that. And so this one I really think is a hybrid with institutionalized. Do you want to kind of set us up for that and we can just go from there?
Sure. Let me actually give you a good definition of institutionalized here. Hold on one second. So institutionalized is another one of these genres that
The
Blake has.
patterns.
The patterns, the story genres. And again, genres not being like comedy, horror, something like that. Instead, they're these story genres like Monster in the House and Buddy Love. And in an institutionalized genre, the main problem is that this main character is living in an institution or they're oppressed by an institution. Sometimes these stories are like military stories like Full Metal Jacket,
Mhm.
or they can be stories like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where it's kind of like the system is the problem in
Mhm.
some ways. It's the system is kind of the major obstacle a person has to live with. Brazil could totally be one.
I mean, I bet we could revisit
list them all day.
we could revisit Rudolph and the
Yeah, right,
Christmas
right.
institution, the
Right.
North Pole institution.
For some reason, I think maybe that was even one we did do.
We
I
didn't
can't
mention it, but we talk about society being the villain there for sure.
Right.
Whenever society is the villain. Yeah.
So and ultimately there's a choice, and that was the part I was trying to remember specifically. But the person can either join it. It's funny. I remember two of them. Is it leave it or join it, burn it down, or commit suicide?
Yeah,
the
it
three
is.
choices.
It's that's what it is from the book. Yeah.
And so they're your only three choices: destroy yourself, destroy the thing, or join it.
Yeah.
And in this story, to your point about the hybrid aspect of it, I think this one is so much the hybrid because because of the interruption, because it starts out as a pure institutionalized story, and then it becomes a monster in the house story. 100%. So that's why these two feel so joined. But I bet it happens a lot in slow burn kind of stories.
I bet
in
we
some
could
ways.
look at it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then one thing you talked about, Jamie, when with Monster in the House that I think is really apparent here is monster as metaphor. Did you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, so that term comes from Josh Whedon in some ways, back in the Buffy days. So monster's metaphor, he always said, and in my book, that's another thing. I'm like, what's the metaphor of your monster? What is it representing in real life? Like what is you kind of substituting this vampire for?
The ghosts in Shining are alcoholism.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Exactly.
There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Frankenstein might be taking science too far to unethical territories or something like that.
Or Jurassic Park in that case.
Or Jurassic Park in that case.
Yeah.
So, in this movie in particular, where we have this institutionalized story, the question is, what do the vampires represent? And a lot of those YouTube videos go deeply into this.
But I think, Bob, you had a good take on this with the Irish.
Is that where I thought
it's kind of all intertwined.
It is kind of, I was noticing that reading through the points. I was like, it kind of all mushes together a little bit.
It does. That's why I thought we could just riff.
Oh, so like I was riffing after I saw that, and I said to you guys that it has to do with the specifics of why the vampires are Irish?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, like in this case, I don't think I don't think Ryan Coogler is being as simple as it's just, the vampires are white and they're black or anything. I think it has to do with the history of the Irish, which please don't come to me for history. You can Google the history of Irish. And Ireland was bled dry itself by colonization and famine and exploitation. please go somewhere else that's not this podcast to find the true, nature of that. But there is an extreme overlap
Yes.
of the Irish story of, enslavement and indentured servitude, and they were vilified in this country and everything in a way. And the interesting thing about this movie is that it kind of shows how the Irish were able to shake that off eventually and become welcome members of society, whereas that is not the same for the Black American.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think that crosses over into why that was chosen.
Yes.
And what that has to do with like appropriation and the institutionalization. Like the Irish escaped the institutionalization and became part of it eventually. And I think this movie's playing with that.
Yes,
and once
definitely.
again, this is not something that Ryan Coogler said. I'm kind of saying that myself, and with a couple other nuggets that I read too. I'm kind of forming that own opinion.
And the reason,
yeah.
And the reason I put it on here is because not only that, but Jamie, going back to it more directly as the vampires, they are their own form of like institutional oppression, right? Like if the vampires get them, if they join the vampires, then they become a dehumanized hive mind with
literally
no personal,
dehumanized,
dehumanized hive mind with no personal expression. So the vampires
and Remick also
function the same way that the Jim Crow era oppressors do in this story.
And Remick sees the way he tries to sell it is like, even before you're a vampire, you're already an equal of mine. Just let's take the next step to us becoming the same. Like he's trying to sell them that there's no separation between what they are and what we are.
There's a
when
line,
there totally is.
There's a line he says later. He says, "I am your freedom."
Right.
Yeah. Right. But the one thing I wanted to say was I think it's really interesting that the why here we talk a lot about on the show. Like one of my litmus tests for a concept is the why here, why now. And we don't need to go into the why now, even though the why now and why here sort of intertwine, which is like why here, why now is like 1930s Jim Crow era South. Is the why here, why now, but even more specifically, the why here is the juke joint, and the why now is the brothers trying to make money, but also giving their community a place to be free amidst the oppression. So it's a very premise specific why here that also, it also is a place where they're fighting off the monsters of real life, and they're gonna fight off the vampires. It's like a perfect choice of setting as character. So I felt like that was
both different monsters are closing in on them.
Yes, so I think it's very instructive that like when you're having a story like this, if you're out there and you're writing like you're gonna write a story that's an institutionalized that collides with a monster in the house. Choosing that why here, why now is going to inform all of the things that you're playing with. But
I will say this. I feel like it's a good place to maybe ask you guys this in this sense. The only criticism I have, or maybe question I have, is how come the clan waited till the morning?
Yeah.
That's the only odd thing. I don't understand that because I was like,
everybody was gone.
It's gone, right? Yeah. So I was like, why would they attack in the morning when few people would be there?
Yeah.
And then I was like, it would have been, I guess it kind of would have been insane if like
they showed up in the middle.
Vampires are attacking and then all of a sudden they show up and then I'm not trying to rewrite the movie.
Yeah.
Well, this is
maybe there's a reason for the morning attack that I missed or something.
Maybe it was less about killing everybody and more about
it's a sneak attack while they're asleep. They would assume
it was just killing the brothers. Then it was just about that.
But
maybe
this is a good segue into like another sub point I have on here, which is I think it's really what's really subversive for me and also instructive. Like this is this is Jamie. You talked about something that you learned from this movie. For me, this is the thing I learned the most from this movie. Is this is basically Shawshank, but no guards and no warden. It's like the choice, the absence to not choose those oppressors feels very intentional. Like, I'd love to hear, I'm sure he's on record talking about like not giving them power in the story, like not making the KKK more prominent, not showing, like, there's that scene where the chain gang in the cotton fields, and there's like a guard there who's got a gun, but we actually don't see him. We hear him shoot at them as they drive by, but we don't even see him. That's like a deliberate choice. They're not even gonna give them space.
It's an active effort not to humanize them.
Yes, it's like
it's all the problems that, I don't know if you guys saw Killers of the Flower Moon. If you did you see that?
I did. Yeah,
I didn't. Yeah.
Okay, so like, I'm not reviewing that movie, but a lot of people had a problem with the fact that it was, number one, centered on the white men, and it also kind of humanized them in that pretty horrific story, right? This is something that I think this movie is intentionally subverting and sidestepping. Like, it could easily have showed, what's the guy's name, Hogwood or whatever?
Yeah.
Is that it could have easily have shown, it could have cut to his POV a few times. It could have shown his plan, their story, everything, but it doesn't.
And what's cool,
they don't deserve it. They don't deserve it.
Yes, and you feel that, right? And the oppression is so, everyone's in so much pain. All the characters you meet are so in so much pain. It's so palpable that you don't even need to see the people who are causing them pain in order to know they're there, right? They're like this looming thing. And I thought it was really instructive how like Hogwood is presented as a false ally, right? Even though they give us dread flags, Jamie's dread flags, they give us a dread flag by him saying, Klan don't exist no more, you know? So that plants the seed in your head, like, this guy is not a trustworthy ally. He's trying to say that there's no Klan there.
If you consider the two aspects, the Klan, and then you've got the vampires, Remick versus Hogwood, right? Remick is, if you really want to argue it, kind of less evil in his ultimate intentions here, because he's not trying. Those vampires are actually sad when they're like staking the people so they go away forever, because they want all of them around. They want to keep them alive eternally. But the Klan just wants to show up and kill them straight up, with unceremoniously, out of hate.
Yep.
So you could argue that, you know, like, even in the eyes of the movie, like, Hogwood's way more of a villain than Remick is.
It's I mean, and
right?
It's not an accident that he's the last person to be vanquished. He's the last evil to be vanquished in
he's
the
story. Emperor of
right?
Yeah.
But I think it's really instructive. Jamie, I don't know if you've seen this before, if you've written this before, but I've never really noticed an institutionalized story where the oppressors of the institution are not even characters in the story. I think that's really, and it works really well. Like, you feel
it works great.
Yeah, so it's definitely interesting.
It's more like the different factions of people who are oppressed are the only characters.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, usually when we talk about institutionalized, we give the institution a embodiment.
Yep,
you know, a nurse Ratchet, for example.
Ray Fiennes in Schindler's List, right?
Yep,
that's right.
We get. I mean, he's half of the movie.
Yep. So it's cool that he chose not to give them the time. Yeah. And
I bet it's insanely intentional too.
Absolutely.
It has to be.
Okay, so now I wanted to kind of bring up Remick specifically. Let's talk. We've touched on him a little, but I think what I wanted to talk about is, like, Remick is so thin and so minimal, but he does work, and I kind of wanted to talk about why you guys think that is. And Bob, you immediately came up with, I think, the best answer, was you were talking about.
Oh, I can just read it, because I kind of just wrote it out. I said, it could be argued that it works because of genre expectations. Coogler handles Remick and vampire lore like the audience is savvy. Remick plainly states his intentions. The underlying substance is dense, but on the surface, you got an obvious vampire rules, a villain who just outright tells us the plan. Coogler uses the genre expectations up front to get past that and on to the important stuff. That's what I wrote to you guys.
I mean, you do feel all of that.
Right. I mean, Jamie kind of set it up too. Like he's not that worried about the genre of it all, right?
It's funny because he does something in this, and I'm not going to fault him for this because he just kind of does it almost like an afterthought. That kind of gets on my nerves about every movie that has a vampire or a zombie. So whenever I hear, I almost want to like codify this in some ways, but whenever I hear, we need garlic, we need a cross, we need steaks, I'm like, shut up. We know.
I did roll my eyes at it. I'm not gonna lie.
But generally, in the bigger picture, Coogler kind of doesn't care about doing that. He's like, you all know they need garlic steaks and stuff. You know they need to be asked in. You know that stuff. We'll just move on. And I feel like that's kind of what he's
with the slow burn and everything that we talked about. He built up this entire society that already totally accepts that vampires are real.
Well, this is not on the it's not on the list, and I don't really even feel. I'll just say it. Side note, to your point, it felt to me like there was a script that had nothing to do with vampires. That was about haints, a 1930s Jim Crow era specific evil that she talks about when we meet her as a hoodoo expert. And they keep bringing up haints, and then when the evil starts happening, she thinks they're haints.
Those are demonic.
Yeah,
spirits,
it's like a
right?
very specific demonic spirit to that time and setting. And then she literally is like, "Oh, these aren't haints; they're vampires."
And she says it's way worse. Is actually, yeah.
And I was like, "Wait, there was a haint movie. This must have been a haint movie. Like, I would have loved to have seen that. But anyway, I don't know why I brought it up, but it felt like there was a haint movie.
There's no moment in the movie where somebody goes, like Jamie said, sort of like, how do we know this stuff works? Like, we know garlic works, but how do we know all the other stuff works? Like,
that's true.
They just kind of, all the characters are so on board with it.
They honestly,
it's fine. I don't mind that.
I feel like this section of the movie just doesn't have a lot of time.
No, there's 20 minutes and the movie's over.
Like, normally most movies like this would take 60 minutes to just figure out.
Okay.
Oh, don't let them in. Or
I got the beats, Jamie. You ready?
Yeah. Okay.
So at 80 minutes, Smoke discovers Vampire Mary killing Stack, shoots Mary. She rises unharmed and says, "We're going to kill every last one of you," and runs out the door. So that's 80 minutes into the movie. Is their first, like...
That's a full movie length.
And then 83 minutes is where they have their first supernatural debate. What is happening? What is Mary? Stack dies in Smoke's arm.
By the way, my entire movie, Last Night at Terrace Lanes, was only 72 minutes.
So you could watch your whole movie and then not even get to that. Yeah.
So to your point, Jamie, 83 minutes is when they have their first, what is happening? What is Mary? And Annie says, this isn't a haint we're dealing with. This is a haint we're dealing with, or worse. And then it isn't until 92 minutes that she throws the garlic on him, pickled garlic, and he burns. And she said, "These aren't haints, they're vampires." So 92 minutes before they even know they're in a vampire movie. That's a long time.
But I feel like the movie that is given to us in that 92 minutes is why I didn't care about them not debating
I got
the specifics of vampires. Like, it sold me on those characters, and I'm like, these people, they know. Yep. They're believers. This stuff is not some kind of, it's not like, like in From Dusk Till Dawn, where they're like, what, vampires exist? Like, there's none of that. And if they exist, how do we kill them? There's none of that debate whatsoever. It's fine.
It's fine.
That's actually kind of subversive if you think about it. It's kind of a little bit like Werewolf.
I wanted more.
I know, but like, think about it this way: it's kind of like American Werewolf in London being the first werewolf movie where the characters know about werewolf movies and pop culture, right? Like that was a huge thing for that movie back then, right? Like this isn't the same as that, but I'm saying these are characters that are aware of this stuff,
of the evils,
so they already
Yeah.
know. They hop right in.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
that stuff didn't bother me. It just, yeah, the vampire movie, once it kicks in, there's nothing to it.
It's not as concerned with it, and it ends quickly.
Yes.
That aspect of it. I don't think the movie's about vampires though.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not a vampire movie. It just has vampires in it.
Okay.
Right? I mean, is that
But before we move on to the next topic, I did want to hit on two things I thought were cool about the villain construction that we haven't talked about yet. And that is the premise specific modus operandi. Weaponizing music as a hunting tactic is like totally, about exploring that cultural, black culture appropriation. And so that is a construction thing they did in the construction. Like that was a deliberate choice Coogler did so that he could explore it through the villain. So I really like that. I think that's really instructive. And then the performative allyship also feels important. Like he's like, I'm your freedom, I'm your friend. Like I'm gonna give you a place where you can be yourself, which is like total bullshit.
literally outside of the juke joint you're destroying.
Yeah.
Like this was where we could be ourselves, but okay.
But I thought that was really instructive that he's specifically mirroring, he's basically acting in another way like the guy Hogwood who sold him the club, like pretending to offer them freedom of expression when really he plans to slaughter them. So yeah.
It's good stuff. We didn't cover Conjuring the Past.
Yeah, we didn't. That's the next thing. Yeah.
Conjuring the Past and Future of Black Music scene. Why does it work?
Yes.
It's the most wild scene in the movie, and I'll say this: the people I saw it with, one of them was like, "That took me out of the movie."
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't say they liked the movie. That was the scene that they felt was odd for them. I don't agree. I loved that whole scene. And that kind of is when I fell in love with the movie for me.
That's my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah.
But I put it on here. I want to hear Jamie's thoughts on this. I put it on here because I think if this came across my desk and I didn't see Ryan Coogler's name on it, I'd be in proceed with caution mode because of that tonal imbalance. But I do think it lays the groundwork. Jamie, what did you think about this?
I almost think in a weird sort of way, I agree with all those points, but for me, it kind of was what the movie, it almost made the movie. It was the special sauce of the movie. That and like the modern score that came in and things like that. To me, I think it's a key element of what the movie is.
Yep.
Like, so I actually liked it. But I was like, this is weird. This is getting weird, but I understand what he's doing. And I kind of like, and the weirder it got, the more I was interested in it. I liked it. I like
how it's like one of those things, like in a movie like this, how else would you portray like music opening up the world between worlds with generations of music, and it's an odd thing to show visually.
Yes.
And he didn't want to do a light show with like like opening up portals or something like that and everything. He did it very artfully and understated by having them show up on the floor.
But I also think it's like very premise specific that like oppressed people throughout history,
right,
before and after, one of their only ways that they could like fight back is through their creative expression, through their music, through their art. So it is so,
which is
like,
also their storytelling.
Yes,
yeah.
That's how they tell the stories of their oppression and their
right.
Yes, and to Jamie's point, it is exactly what the movie is. It is what the movie.
The movie's not a vampire movie. It's this.
Yeah.
It happens to have vampires in it. I don't know what the genre of this is. You could say, so I've seen people say it's a musical. I don't really agree with that.
Yeah, no.
But it's not a vampire movie. It's whatever what we're talking about right now is.
It's my favorite scene in the movie, but I was curious how many people it took out, and it was like the divisive emotional disconnection.
It took my friend out of the movie completely.
Wow.
He said,
yeah, because there's some tonal imbalance there. So that is definitely a proceed with caution when you're writing something like that.
Yeah, seeing like a break dancer and everything. No,
in
I mean
1930s. Yeah,
in the 1930s,
a turntable in a 1930s sawmill. Yeah.
But a lot of filmmakers do that, though. It's just how I'm thinking of Django. There's modern rap music in Django and stuff. I mean, filmmakers do that all the time. I think Coogler took it an extra step by actually having, instead of playing that music on just the soundtrack, they're in the scene. Like, he could have easily had just the music be like, have some modern hip hop and have some, then throw in some ancient stuff and everything. But no, he had them all on the floor. So,
but if someone's out there and they're thinking about being inspired by this to do something, to take a wild swing like that with the genre ingredients, Jamie, what would you say to them?
I don't know. I mean, I think I think it's one of those things, especially for spec screenwriters, you kind of have to do something to make it different,
Yep.
So I don't actually think it's a bad idea. I like the wild swings can be a strikeout or a home run, and I think you just have to take them as a spec screenwriter. I think you sometimes have to take
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I really do.
Co-signed. I say proceed with caution, but fucking do it.
It's kind of the same thing as proceed with caution in some ways, but I don't know. I think the wild, like, that it's what's going to make or break you. You're either going to be the weird script with the wild swing, or you're going to be the weird script that these people don't know what they're doing with the wild swing, and it's a total mess. And
in the spirit of the movie, though, I'd say this: like, are you an artist? Express yourself.
Yeah.
In the spirit of this movie, like, what are you doing? Don't hold back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all the two of you can relate to this. There's definitely been things in movies that I've made, like actual movies, where there was a swing I wanted to take, but I was afraid.
Yeah.
And when I watched the movie, I go, God damn it, I know this would have been better if we took this swing.
Yep. Every time.
Yeah.
Every time you're going like, damn it, you should have took that swing.
I always wish I went 30 times harder.
Yes.
I think the reason we feel kind of the way we do, like the conservative approach, is because most wild swings are strikeouts. Okay, most of them.
Yep.
They really are. And we're trying to help people make the best they can. So we're almost like, yeah, your weird idea is just weird. It's not good. It doesn't make sense. So we're a lot of times they're bad ideas. Like a lot of the ideas we're talking about that fall in the same category are bad ideas. And honestly, if I saw this come across my desk, I might think it's a bad idea.
That's what I thought too. I was like, ooh.
But yeah, but as I watch, like, here's the flip side of the bad idea. I think you can convince somebody you're the expert with these kind of ideas, because it's like, wow, this must be a thing. This is the way screenwriters do it. And they're impressed almost by the audacity of doing certain things sometimes. And I think audacity is a big part of breaking in the screenwriting business.
Also, just like, I think the context of when we are and when something is made matters. Like, it is 2025 and the world's in a different place than it was. This scene, even though it's taking place in this, historical movie, it feels so new and modern,
right?
And stuff,
and
like,
fresh. It's so fresh.
It's such a fresh idea. I
think you're right. And when I was watching it, I was like, this is kind of weird and kind of funky. And then I was like old man me, probably would think this would never fly back in the, maybe it would fly in the 70s if it was more druggy and trippy.
Right. Psychedelic.
Psychedelic. That was part of the weirdness of it. It wasn't that psychedelic. It was kind of,
they were just there. They were just there.
Opened the veil, man. They were just there.
In execution, they were just
Timelines were
They
colliding.
didn't like sparkle in or
No.
any. That's what I said. There's no like light show about
I
it. It's
fucking
just
loved it.
they're just there.
I have to
That's
say,
it.
the more weird it got, like when it kind of got like a spaceman-y guy and stuff, I was like, yeah, I like this. I like it. And that's what I mean. Like, you can take a bad idea so far that suddenly it seems like a bold idea.
It reminds me of when we
This
talked
is a
in
bold
everything.
idea.
It
Yeah,
is,
this is, yeah.
It reminds me this discussion of when we quoted the Daniels about Everything Everywhere at Once, and they were in their idea generation process, and they were the Everything Bagel came up, and they were like, "This is so dumb. Like, we can't do this. This is so dumb." And then it ended up being, they just kept leaning into it. It ended up being this huge swing, and it ended up being what the whole movie is centered around. So
Around a pun.
yeah,
It's a pun.
yeah.
Yeah, they won Best Picture with a pun. I don't know. I like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm not a teacher, but I think in the year of our Lord 2025, with the internet existing and AI and everything, man, go a little bit nuts. Like, find your Ryan Coogler scene.
That's kind of my thinking. I'm like, a younger generation than me, for sure, would they just go 100% on board with this? Like, oh yeah, this is normal, in a different way than maybe I would go on board with it. Even though I loved it.
I think they would.
Yeah,
Their
that was
sensibilities
kind
are
of
different than us growing up.
Yep.
So anyway, great scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Audience contract violations.
This one's mine.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this in a few episodes. I'm not going to go deep into it. If you want to know more about this and you're out there, we did the most deep dive of this technique on the Long Legs episode. So check out the Long Legs episode for a lot more on this. But the short answer is basically, we've sort of discovered this through the show, and it has evolved as we've done 135 episodes.
136 now.
136, 8 years. So basically, in an arc plot Hollywood cheeseburger movie, which this sort of is kind of debatable. We're not really talking about that. You have a contract with your audience that we're going to be aligned with your hero at all times. Like, if your character has a meaningful moment, if they acquire information, if they make a choice, if they have an emotional response to something, we're going to be 100% aligned either when it happens or a couple scenes later after it happens. More like the next scene. And Jamie, I think you've already answered my question here, but I'll give a few examples first. So we talked about, the one I use the most is The Matrix. And in The Matrix, Trinity goes into a room and she hears something from the Oracle, but we don't get to see what she hears. And if that were Neo, it wouldn't work. We have to see what the Oracle tells Neo because he is our primary perspective. When we have a contract that says when Neo learns something, we're going to learn something. So, but I read scripts all the time where the Neo character of the story walks into a room and the scene just describes a door closing. And then the door opens and our main character comes out. And for the next 30 minutes, the movie continues and they learn the most important piece of information they've ever learned in their life. And we never get to learn what that is. That's an audience contract violation. That disconnection is a cheat. But we've talked about several episodes that we've done where there's been one subversion of that, one violation, and because it's chosen in just such a moment where it's like emotionally resonant, it works. The audience forgives it, just like the one
Godzilla -1.
Godzilla -1 is one of the best ones where like we think that he did a kamikaze into Godzilla's mouth to save the day, but we didn't see that. Then we get a flashback that he found out there was a parachute in there. And so he parachuted out. So he made a choice to parachute out, but we never got to see that choice. So we think he's dead. So that's an audience contract violation. But we all decided that the movie wouldn't work without that really emotional. It fit the movie. It fit what it was doing. So it works. And another one that we talked about was Sydney and Scream. The whole movie were with Sydney. And we don't know where Ghostface is in the scene when Sydney's being hunted. And in the finale scene, she disappears. We don't know where Sydney is, and we're with Ghostface while Sydney is hunting Ghostface. And so we don't know where Sydney is, what she's about to do, and then that's how she comes out and gets the upper hand. And without that audience contract violation, we wouldn't have had that major amazing moment where she gets the upper hand. So this example, the one I wanted to bring up, I think, Jamie, since you've talked about how much this functions like TV, that's something I've never mentioned. Because some listeners have asked me, what about my pilot script? And like, in TV, this doesn't matter because TV functions with perspective and point of view where it's constantly shifting. So there's constantly audience contract violations. You're constantly being disconnected from a character and they learn something that you don't get to learn what they learn. And the whole episode is about figuring out what this side character, who is the main character of that episode, just learned. So since this one is kind of like a three-hander, I think that explains it. And what I'm talking about is keeping Smoke's choice to let Stack live off screen. Like that's
a violation.
That's a violation. Like we have been seeing what Stack and Smoke are doing the entire movie. Every time they've done anything, we know exactly what they did. And then here we have a scene where it's assumed that he killed his brother, but they leave it ambiguous. And I just wanted to ask you guys why you think it works.
I personally think these work for effect.
Okay.
If there's an effect you're trying to achieve, breaking rules can somehow be very effective. And I'll give you an example from that I always use, like when I direct horror, for example. Like, what's the greatest jump scare in movie history generally thought of off the top of your head?
The Jaws head boat thing.
Well, maybe I'm asking the wrong question.
Oh, sorry.
A lot of times people point to The Exorcist 3.
The 3.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
And
okay.
The Shears. I was going to say that, Jamie.
The Jaws one's pretty good, though.
It is. It's fucking good, Bob.
So the lesson I learned with that one is she looks in the room where the jump scare comes from, right? Like that's kind of the trick. Like she goes in the room and comes back out. And honestly, that probably wouldn't happen, right? So it kind of, it's almost like if you have a wall behind the person, they look one way and then the monster's coming out of the wall. It doesn't exist, but it works for effect. You know, it's like something for effect because the audience thinks they have a contract with you. So therefore you can trick them. And I think you can get away with that once for effect. I think the danger comes in is when you're not doing it for effect, or you do it more than once. That's my personal opinion. I think you could break any rule for effect. Like it's almost like, you know, take it back to a Save the Cat kind of thing. Talking about the movie Psycho, for example, you kill off the main character in Psycho. Spoiler alert! In the shower scene, because the audience thinks there's a contract with you, and that's why it works for effect. And I think the same thing happens in these cases. And most of the ones you listed, you could see why they did it.
Yep.
It somehow makes it a little more interesting, spices things up a little bit if they trick us a little bit. And most of the ones you listed happen at the end, right?
Yep.
They kind of happen.
Yep.
They're all in the end.
Yep.
I'll be honest with you, like I've only seen this movie truly once, but I just assumed he didn't kill him. So it didn't have that maybe intended effect on me, but it also
the ambiguity of the kill.
I was like, oh, we're not going to be shown that.
Yeah.
I was like, he's alive.
Right.
I was like instantly, I was like, he's alive, but it didn't bother me.
It's something that happens a lot in like television and stuff. My wife will be like, did he kill him? And I said, no, because if they killed him, they'd make a big scene of it. And we know, you know, and if they don't show it, there's probably a reason why they don't show it. You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I guess I'm not saying it's not a contract violation. Instantly I just registered like, oh, we're not seeing that. He's alive.
You were already you were like, oh, you were in on the twist coming.
Yeah. Right. it didn't feel like a twist to me.
Yeah. Now
That's what the thing is. It didn't feel like a twist.
It could have just as easily played out like the twist was. Why is he still alive? He's attacking us now, or something later on in the beat, or something.
There's even a part of me that's like, once again, I am not Ryan Coogler at all, nor am I trying to rewrite the movie. But I don't know if I would even have minded a goodbye scene between them, where it's like, I can't do this.
That's a good point.
Go, go or something. He
That's
just says
what
go.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like that's to me, not robbing us of that scene is the audience contract violation. The choice.
I'm sure there was a reason.
The choice not to kill him in that moment.
Do you think that Ryan Coogler was prioritizing the twist over having that moment? Is that what you're saying?
I think, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like
maybe they just didn't film it.
I mean,
it was a misdirection.
That's probably why Michael B isn't getting the Oscar, because he didn't have that
he didn't have that scene.
That scene where he's acting against himself, saying goodbye to his brother he loves.
Maybe they had a catastrophic data failure and lost an entire scene. It just seems like it's supposed to be a twist.
That's right.
The IMAX. Oh my god.
Right. Anyway, the
I think
opening
this
closing.
last one. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I was.
Is that you talk? Were you? I was saying opening closing image. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I already scrolled down too far. I didn't see that one next.
Oh yeah,
we haven't really talked about this one.
Yeah, the next one is opening closing image and flash forwards and horror openings.
No, we did talk about the second part. We talked about
so
the
just the opening
part.
closing image.
Yep.
So I put this on here because we have talked in the past about the power of this beat. And this one does it a little different, to Jamie's point he was talking about earlier, how it flash forwards to the end, and instead of seeing, it's not really the opening, it's the closing, but we see it first. So I just wanted to get Jamie's take on this approach.
Yeah, and just to give you a quick thing, a lot of times opening closing image are kind of a before and after picture, sometimes literal, sometimes thematic. And they usually bookend each other. And a lot of times they come back to the same scene. In this case, like maybe you see the same scene twice, but it kind of informs like something that's different about it. So it's less like a before and after and more like, here's what we thought and here's what we know kind of thing.
Yeah, expectation, reality. Yeah.
For the sake of the listener, what specific opening and closing images are we talking about? Because
it's a good point.
There's like there's like a prologue, and then there's
Sammy comes into the church. He's bloody. He's beaten. He's got a gigantic gash on his face.
Right.
He's holding half of a guitar, and he's so traumatized he can't speak. And then when the movie closes with an intercut between Smoke killing the Klan members and getting killed, and Sammy revisiting Sammy with that opening scene, it's literally the exact same scene. So that's what we're talking about.
Gotcha.
But now we know why he's bloody, why he's beaten, why the guitar is broken, why he can't speak. And so we have different emotional response.
You could also argue the closing image is the true ending after the credits.
Yeah, that's
right.
True.
Which I think also,
Now, in the case of this movie, when I saw the flash forward, I knew exactly why he was the way he was. What was his scar? I knew the vampires did this, and he had gone through a night of hell with the vampires.
Yeah, that's true.
So it wasn't like a total surprise. It was.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Including the after credits thing might actually have more weight here, right? Like him holding the guitar covered in blood and gashes, and then him as an old man
playing the guitar,
having lived a life
in the face of all of that,
of the horror that he experienced.
Yes,
his wounds healed, but not truly gone.
That's really because we even see the gigantic gash on his
the gash.
They added
to the real buddy guy.
Yeah,
he is a real.
In some ways, legend, I guess it might speak thematically to the before and after. In that, in the before, they're almost victims or some ways, and in the after, they have more agency in their life.
Yes, he's risen above the oppression.
Right.
Yes, and
Good stuff.
That's good, Bob. I hadn't really thought of the mid-credits
Well,
scene as
that's
the
why I
closing
asked you to
image.
define it. I asked you
Yeah.
to define it because I was like, do they mean the closing image of before the
Yeah.
credits or after the credits? Because to me, I was like, the after credits
In
are
my
is
defense, half the
that's
theater both times was walking out
right. I
before
know,
that scene. So,
but that is the true ending of the movie for me. That's the
it
ending of the
is the
film.
ending of the movie. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're right, and it does, like Jamie said, it does really. When you look at it that way, it does. It is exactly what we talk about with the before and after snapshot.
Right.
He's literally holding the guitar, playing music with a scar on his face. So yeah, I think he's playing music in the final.
Because his dad was
frame.
wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Well, that's a perfect segue into Sammy's meaningful life choice.
Yeah, I think we basically already
kinda
did this,
talked about it,
I
yeah.
you know what I wanted to say? Correct me if I'm reading this wrong. It's interesting. What struck me is that the choice, the way we're being shown the choice, like the 1992 catching up with him, it's almost like the choice is abstract, like it's a life choice, not a momentary choice. And usually in movies, what we're getting, the final meaningful choice, it's like Luke choosing to use the Force to blow up the Death Star. We don't really see Luke using the Force as an old man after that. You know what I mean? Like this, it's really
Not until
it's yeah,
decades
it's
later.
really like an abstract choice. And maybe abstract's not, he's making a life choice. You know what I mean? It's interesting. He's choosing to be free through his music for life. And I don't know, I thought that was interesting, and it feels intentional. What did you guys think about that?
Well, that's his arc, right? Is that choice is his arc. He's truly a changed person.
Yeah.
When we meet him, he's obviously unsure if he should even ever play again.
But I think it's interesting
Right?
that usually in movies it's a momentary choice, not
Right.
a decades long choice.
But I'd argue that a lot of the movies you're probably thinking of in your head, that momentary choice would be life defining in some fashion.
Yes, they're
Like,
always
they're
they're always life
life-defining.
defining. But
Like,
here
if I
it
do
feels
this, I
like,
could die right now. That's a
yeah,
life-defining choice.
but it feels
right?
like this is like a choice that he's just continuing to make over and over. So therefore, it reads as like abstract, which is interesting to me. I don't know. Found that interesting.
On those lines, the off-screen scene might be more the archy kind of thing, like the choose to let Sammy live versus, sorry, my dog's playing. He wants to chime in. But I feel like that's almost closer to that moment of arcness that
Yes,
the thing we're
okay.
denied. Though I'm not even sure what that scene is exactly, but it just feels like something like whatever agreement the vampire and the brother come to let Sammy live to do music. That seemed when because he was the one that was trying to tell him not to do music. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
That seems like it could be like one of those moments, but we don't get to see that. We just hear about it off screen.
Also, it's a weird thing where I was like, how has Stack been like keeping tabs on Sammy throughout his life, or is this the first exposure ever that
because he says we have all your albums,
right? But I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like, has he been close? Like, has there been but he just never spoke to him or something like that? Or I don't know. It's really an interesting, kind of ambiguous thing going on there.
But
I kind of read it. I read it like Stack not only didn't kill him to honor his brother. It's almost like, like when vampires, it's respect, but it's also like Stack kind of feels slightly human whenever he listens to Sammy's music again. Like, it's the only way he can go back to before that night.
Be free.
It's the only way that Stack, because I mean, being a vampire is a curse as much as it is a gift, right? So
he even says like he doesn't like the electrical stuff. He likes the old stuff, the real. And then he says, I miss the real. Like, he uses those words to your point. So
yeah. But I think you could interpret that scene in a myriad of ways.
Yeah.
So I think that's the end of our talking points.
Yes.
Woo! So yeah, and I would say this: if we have an email address, and if we got anything wrong here, we're very open.
Please.
This like once again,
we're
recognizing
3 white
who
guys.
we are. 3 white dudes on the internet talking about sinners.
Yeah.
So we are happy to be told we're not getting something.
Yeah, it's exploring things we don't have the capacity to feel at the level that others would, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with that, unless you guys have anything to plug, you guys got anything you want to plug? What's the email address that they can...
writersblockbusterspodcast@gmail.com. You can send us questions about anything. We've been on a streak of like three episodes where we haven't answered questions, but that's because we've had 2 hours of talking points. So
right.
Which it seems like we always do. So we'll never answer questions again. No.
No. If we get enough, we can do a whole episode.
We can do our episode
on that.
That's fun. I don't have anything to plug, but I had somebody on Twitter say somebody I knew for a little while. They said, "Oh, these guys have a podcast, and I just found out about it." So I'm always kind of pleading with the audience that's out there to, if you could, post those kind of things just so people do get a chance to find out about it. And reviews, posts, all that stuff really helps. But just to see that this week from somebody that has probably been following me on X and interacting with me forever, it's kind of like, man, please help us out.
Because he's a screenwriter and a horror filmmaker. Like, he's made multiple horror feature films.
That's right. And to see that, it's just like, this people like that who would listen to the podcast just need to find a way. And we don't do like paid advertising or anything like that. We don't even do much.
I specifically don't avoid that for the benefit of the audience.
Exactly. And we don't, and I even mean to promote it or anything like that. There's really not a ton of promotion we can do the way we do it. So if you can help out, if you listened all the way to the end of this point, even if you've done it in the past before, just if you can, shut us out anywhere you can. It's a big help. And we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah. Especially if you like the show. If you hate it, you don't have to.
This show fucking sucks. Don't listen to it.
Actually, if you hate it, go ahead, share it.
That'll attract people. If you hate it, go for it.
I got to see what this guy hates so much. Let me listen. These 3 assholes don't know what they're saying at all.
They said the movie industry's over. The box office doesn't matter. Look at Sinners.
Yeah, right. And 2 episodes later, they're taking it all back.
That's
and
right.
between they praise Alien 3. They don't know anything. Okay, I think that's everything.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
Yep. Bye. Hey, this is Bob Rose, and thank you for listening to Writers Blockbusters. If you'd like to financially support the show, please consider joining my Patreon. I've been producing the podcast for several years completely out of pocket, and I'd like to keep producing it ad-free and no longer at a loss. If you'd like to help, head on over to patreon.com/Bob Rose Sucks. That's right, Bob Rose Sucks. And if you want the one and only Jimmy George to help polish up that writing project you're kind of struggling with, head on over to scriptbutcher.com. As a listener, you already know he's the best there is, scriptbutcher.com. You can also support the show by simply sharing it or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate both. Thank you for listening, and see you next episode.